On May 5th, 2023, in an interview with Kinda Funny Games, Xbox head Phil Spencer said the following when discussing some of Xbox's recent struggles.
We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation, where everybody built their digital library of games.
And he's right. Xbox One really did put Microsoft behind when it came to console sales. While the Xbox One had many issues that caused it to fall behind Sony and Nintendo, it seemed like the Xbox One was doomed before it even released. And many believe it was due to Microsoft's announcement of the console and poor handling of the initial criticism. Let's get into it. The Electronic Entertainment Expo, also known as E3, used to be the biggest conference in gaming, where big game studios and developers would hold their annual conferences to talk about upcoming games, show gameplay, hold demos, and discuss new consoles. This was the stage to use when showcasing your latest and greatest news because everyone was watching. Back in 2013, the console war was still ongoing, and people knew Microsoft and Sony were soon going to be announcing their next flagship consoles. Rumors were all over the place. Will the new consoles forego the disk drive and only use digital media? Xbox 720? What about the PlayStation 4? Yeah, that one's a little more obvious. Some rumors were a little more concerning, like the next-gen consoles might have an always-on connectivity requirement. These rumors were further fueled when then Microsoft Studios creative director shot out a few tweets defending always-on gaming. It did get some pretty good memes though. Microsoft had some pretty big shoes to fill. After all, the Xbox 360 was huge for revolutionizing online gameplay and introducing the motion sensing camera, the Kinect, which did help boost the sales of the Xbox 360. About 3 weeks before E3 on May 21st, 2013, Microsoft held a showcase unveiling the name and features of their new console, the Xbox One. The conference detailed new features utilizing the Kinect 2, a now mandatory device, which used voice controls for navigation, opening up apps, and using hand gestures to swipe and pinch and zoom your image, even using the camera to recognize your face for logging in. The Xbox One also had a huge focus on media like television, music, and movies. Microsoft touted the Xbox One as being an all-in-one entertainment console, and they really wanted you to understand that.
Go to music. Go to Internet Explorer. Watch movie. Let's do what millions of people do every day when they turn on their TV. Guess what? They watch TV. TV, 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 and TV, 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 TVs. TV, 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 TV. Of course you have.
While all of these features were cool, where were the games? It took nearly 30 minutes into the showcase before games were even mentioned. It was almost as if Microsoft was showcasing a media device that played games rather than the other way around. Even though the initial showcase seemed to be off to a rocky start, the disappointment didn't end there. Shortly after the conference, more details were coming out about the Xbox One. For starters, the new Kinect was required to constantly be on in the event the user wanted to use gestures or voice controls. This was the case even when the console was off, prompting privacy concerns of being recorded while the system was not in use. It was also discovered that you would have to always be connected to the internet, even if you wanted to play single-player offline games. Microsoft soon updated Xbox.com with a page containing some of the specs and details of the system. Under network requirements, the site read, "While a persistent internet connection is not required, Xbox One is designed to verify if system, application, or game updates are needed, and to see if you have acquired new games or resold, traded in, or given your game to a friend. With Xbox One, you can game offline for up to 24 hours on your primary console, or 1 hour if you are logged on a separate console accessing your library. Offline gaming is not possible after these prescribed times until you re-establish a connection, but you can still watch live TV and enjoy Blu-ray and DVD movies. So a player could play offline, but only for a day before having to re-establish your connection." Then there was the confusion on game sharing. With the Xbox One allowing players to install games on the console stored on the cloud, you didn't need the physical disc after the initial install. As a result, Microsoft enacted DRM on used games that wouldn't allow players to trade in or share physical games, as well as region locking games. Disc-based games could be traded to your friends, however they had to be on your friends list for at least 30 days, and the game could only be traded once. It was pretty confusing. Even the military came out with a response highlighting the issues with the Xbox One. With the inability to play outside Microsoft's network regions, the mandatory check-in every 24 hours, and the security concerns of the always-on camera and microphone, the Army Times was quoted as saying, "Microsoft has single-handedly alienated the entire military." June 10th, 2013. E3 is here, and all eyes are watching and waiting to hear more details about the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Microsoft held their conference a few hours before Sony, and it went as you would expect for an E3 conference. New games were shown off like Metal Gear Solid 5, Dead Rising 3, and below. There was a scuffed demo attempt.
It will happen, I promise.
And Microsoft announced the price of the Xbox One, $499 or euros depending on your region, and £429 sterling, with a release date planned for November. It was pretty straightforward, but Xbox did nothing to address any of the feedback gamers were sending about the new restrictions. Sony was up next, and many were concerned after the news of Microsoft's new, features. Was this the direction the industry was heading? Sony did hold a similar showcase earlier in the year where they announced the PlayStation 4 with some of the technical specs, holding off on the price and release date, most likely to hear what Microsoft had in store. Keep in mind, this E3 showcase was just as important for Sony, as they had their fair share of issues with the PlayStation 3, such as the absurd initial pricing, as well as the PSN hack nightmare. Well, Sony definitely saw their opportunity to capitalize on the anger from Microsoft fans, and they went gloves off. Sony unveiled their next console, the PlayStation 4, and wasted no time addressing the issues Microsoft seemed to have shrugged off.
PlayStation 4 won't impose any new restrictions on the use of PS4 gamers. Yes, that's a good thing. When a gamer buys a PS4 disc, they have the rights to use that copy of the game. They can trade in the game at retail, sell it to another person, lend it to a friend, or keep it forever. PlayStation 4 disc-based games don't need to be connected online to play. If you enjoy playing single-player games offline, PS4 won't require you to check in online periodically. And it won't stop working if you haven't authenticated within 24 hours.
It was the perfect response. Restrictions for physical games? Not here. Always online requirement? Nope. Oh yeah, it's $100 cheaper too.
$399.
It was received so well because not only did it reassure the gamers that Sony had no plans to head in the direction Microsoft was with Xbox, but it also let the fans know that their voices were being heard. Plus for Sony, I'm sure it felt pretty good getting some jabs in on the competition.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
As if it couldn't get worse for Microsoft, the day after their conferences on June 11th, Game Trailers released an interview with then president of Microsoft's interactive entertainment business, Don Mattrick. This interview was actually recorded just before the Microsoft E3 press conference, and Don Mattrick had this to say regarding the always online requirement.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message if you don't, like it?
If you have zero access to the internet, that is an offline device.
Yikes. So an official Microsoft response regarding the online requirement concern is to stick with the Xbox 360 and don't bother getting the new Xbox One. What's worse was that this interview let everyone know that Microsoft was aware of the concerns that everyone had been talking about and decided to flat out ignore them. Don Mattrick left Microsoft about a month after this, so I guess it didn't really matter in the end. The reception of Don Mattrick's interview was pretty brutal. Many fans felt like this was a slap in the face, or felt like turning to the PS4 was the better option. We did get some pretty top tier memes though. However, only a week after E3 on June 19th, there was an update from Don Mattrick on the Xbox website regarding Xbox One titled, "Your Feedback Matters, Update on Xbox One." Essentially, the post announced that Microsoft would be reversing many of the major features after the backlash from fans, and most likely some of the dunks from Sony. An internet connection will no longer be required to play offline Xbox One games. Outside of the initial setup and installation, your disc-based games can now be played offline without a 24-hour check-in requirement. Also, no limits on sharing, reselling, or trading in physical games, with the downside now being the removal of the original ability to play installed games without the disc. Although it wasn't mentioned in the Xbox One update, it appeared that Microsoft even reversed the always-on Connect requirement. On August 5th, 2013, IGN posted a Q&A within Xbox One chief platform architect Mark Whitten. When asked, since Connect must be plugged in for the Xbox One to function, what happens if your Connect breaks? Will the console cease to function? Witten responded by saying Xbox One is designed to work with the Kinect plugged in. It makes gaming better in many ways. That said, like online, the console will still function if Kinect isn't plugged in, although you won't be able to use any feature or experience that explicitly uses the sensor. As surprising as this change was, Microsoft still planned to bundle the new Kinect with every console at launch, with no plans to sell a cheaper model without the Kinect. Fast forward to November, the Xbox One finally released and the initial reception was pretty good, selling 3 million units within the first 2 months of its release. However, it did seem to lag behind the PS4 from early on. In 2014, Microsoft would release a model of the Xbox One without the Kinect, which did show a boost in sales, but in 2015, Microsoft announced they would stop reporting Xbox One sales and instead be reporting Xbox Live Gold subscriptions, which kind of sent the message of how sales were going at the time. Microsoft would release an upgraded model, the Xbox One S, with a bigger hard drive and 4K support in 2016, and an even more powerful model, the Xbox One X, in 2017. While Microsoft did begin implementing backwards compatibility for older games in 2015, the Xbox One did have a lack of exclusive games outside of Forza, Halo, and Gears of War, which only hurt the sales even more. Meanwhile, Sony was seeing a surge with PlayStation 4 sales with multiple highly rated exclusive games. Even though the Xbox One did lay a good foundation for the Xbox Series X and S consoles, Microsoft spent most of the generation playing catch-up with Sony and trying to figure out what they wanted their console to really be. It seemed from the beginning Microsoft wanted the Xbox One to be an all-in-one entertainment system, doing everything with their focus being on TVs and movies, with the games being secondary, when all gamers really wanted was to play video games. Meanwhile, Sony was focusing on games first, building a great catalog of exclusives which attracted gamers. But how bad was it? Microsoft did stop reporting console sales back in 2015, but it wasn't until in 2022 when Microsoft was working on the acquisition of Activision Blizzard that court documents stated, Sony has surpassed Microsoft in terms of console sales, having sold more than twice as many Xbox in the last generation. This has bled into the current generation as well, with as of June 2023, PS5 sales are ahead of Xbox Series S and X sales by over 17 million units. So where does that put Microsoft today? Phil discussed some of the company's current direction in the interview with Kind of Funny Games.
Our vision is that everybody who's on console has to feel like they have a great experience and they're a first-class citizen. They've invested a ton in our platform, but we are not in a position, and I see it out there. I see commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true that if we go off and build great games, all of a sudden you're going to see console share shift in some dramatic way. There is no world where Starfield's an 11 out of 10 and people start selling their PS5. We have to go off and do our own thing with Game Pass, with the stuff we do with xCloud, and the way we build our games.
I do agree with Phil regarding going their own way to be different in today's industry. Game Pass is a great service Microsoft has created, allowing you to play games without having to individually buy them, with a huge feature of having new and exclusive games being available day one on the service. However, I do think he writes off the importance of new exclusive games. While I will agree that most gamers are already part of some sort of ecosystem, whether that be Sony, Nintendo, or Microsoft, I would even argue that Sony and Nintendo both have exclusive games that could be considered console sellers for the PlayStation 5 and the Switch. Microsoft needs exclusives just as badly, if not for Xbox, but to continue to attract Game Pass subscribers as well, and Microsoft hasn't really had any huge releases that seem to be of that caliber of success. Not to mention, with Game Pass being available on PC and Xbox, there isn't really a reason to buy an Xbox if you already have a PC. And this has put Microsoft into a weird situation where they can't release a game as an Xbox exclusive to sell more consoles, because the current business model has been releasing every exclusive game on Game Pass. As of January 2022, Microsoft reportedly hit over 25 million Game Pass subscribers, with that number assumed to have increased with the recent move to discontinue Xbox Live Gold and migrate those users into Game Pass Core. Microsoft has yet to announce an updated number of Game Pass subscribers as the recording of this video, but only time will tell if the current model is working out for Microsoft. I do believe the Xbox One was ahead of its time. With today's gaming shifting more towards digital games, as well as TV shows and movies dominating more on streaming platforms, the Xbox One would be a no-brainer in today's industry. However, I do think what really hurt Microsoft was their just deal with it response to the feedback from the fans that really left a bad taste in their mouth. Even though Microsoft decided to backtrack on some of the features before the console even released, the damage was already done. It's pretty wild to think that the Xbox One showcase happened over a decade ago, yet still shows some scars for Microsoft. I know the fans haven't forgotten, and the internet never forgets.
It's called Xbox 360.
How do you think Microsoft is handling the current generation of Xbox? Is Xbox Game Pass the way to go? Or do you think they should be trying to make more of an effort to sell Xbox Series S and X consoles? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, check out some of our other videos. Until then, happy gaming.